And we are live. Sorry for the lateness of the start time on this. I was just over on show with Mr. Aaron Clary. So maybe some of you saw that, maybe some of you didn't. But it was awesome. It was really great to be on Cappy's stream. I was on there we were on for about 2 hours, actually. Really getting into some issues, talking about what it's like to be an old geezer who's still involved in this crazy scene that we're all involved with. And it was a lot of fun. So I would encourage you to go over to Aaron Clary's channel and to have a look at that stream, because it was a really great conversation. I mean, Cappy is just a great guy, very intelligent, very funny, all the rest of it, everything that I want to be and I'm not. So it was cool to catch up with him. He's been on this channel before, and it was cool to catch up with him and have that chat. So it was very good. But apologies for the lateness of starting this broadcast. Just drinking a little bit of the old mineral water there. Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about today is getting a little bit more into the current affairs sort of situation, because I was listening to a really interesting podcast about New York and the effects of the virus and all the rest of it. But before I go into that, just to remind you, well, firstly, please subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button, notifications bell, give me a like, give me a comment, all of that good stuff. And also, if you've got questions on dating, charisma, mindset, how to get the best results in dating that you possibly can, stick them into the chat and we'll get to them later on in the stream. And yeah, Charisma and Dating Academy, my course, which is what this whole stream is named after, is opening for new students next week. So if you want to learn how to go from chode to chad and get to girls, then Charisma and Dating Academy is open for 5 days only for enrollments from the 1st of December to the 5th of December. Okay. It's capped at 100 students, so we're only taking 100 guys in this time. So you'll need to act quickly. This course teaches you everything that I've ever learned about dating, about charisma, about how to have the right mindset. So you walk in there with that kind of James Bond swagger and operate in an effective manner face to face with women, which you'll need to do, even if you're meeting girls on social media, even if you're meeting them on Instagram. We were talking with Myron and Fresh yesterday about Instagram game. If you're meeting them on Tinder, whatever, you're still going to have to meet in real life. And you need to be able to come across in a charismatic and awesome manner. And that's what CAD Academy will teach you to do. Everything you need to know within a 10-hour video course. Plus, you get 10 live intimate webinars with me and other people like John MLD, Aaron, hopefully, Myron. We'll get all these guys in. It's going to be awesome. Great way to finish up 2020, to go into 2021 when hopefully things are going to open a bit and we're going to have, well, fingers crossed, we're going to have a bit more of life back. And so, yeah, you need to get this stuff sorted. You need to get this stuff down. Anyway, yeah, so look out for that and get onto the waiting list. There's a link below, or there will be a link below when I put it in to the waiting list. So get on that ASAP. Also, I should just mention as well, I'm doing a free webinar. Monday night, I'm going to do a free webinar. So it's going to be on Zoom. It's going to be a private webinar, not on YouTube or anything like that. So we can be a little bit more free in terms of the stuff that we talk about. And it's going to be basically about how you can 10x your dating life in 30 days as well. So I would encourage you, get on that free webinar. It's going to be awesome. Again, I'll try and get the link up during the show actually, but I will be putting the link in the description below. So look out for that also. It's going to be 11 p.m. UK time, which is 6 p.m. EST on Monday. Okay. And compress. Sorry, that's enough of that. If you're tuning in live, thank you very much. As I say, put your questions in the chat. If you are joining, watching the replay, then welcome. And here we go. Let's get into the topic. So I wanted to talk about the fact that you have no choice but to optimize your life in 2020 and going into 2021. You have no choice but to level up and self-actualize, really. And why do I say that? Well, I was listening this morning to a podcast by James Altucher, and he was talking to an author whose name I've now unprofessionally forgotten. But let me just see actually what the last podcast was called. Do you guys know James Altucher? Do you listen to his show? If you don't, I would recommend that you do. He is a very interesting, intelligent man. So he interviewed a writer called Scott Galloway, and the show is called Scott Galloway on Post-Corona: From Crisis to Opportunity, because Scott Galloway, who is a professor of marketing, and there you go, played a tiny bit of the show there, who's a professor of marketing, has written a book about post-Corona and opportunities and challenges that are coming out of this whole thing. And really, really interesting conversation between James Altucher and this guy, Mr. Galloway. Now, James Altucher is famous for many things, but he's famous recently for writing an article about New York City. And the title of the article was something like, New York City is never going to recover from this situation that we find ourselves in now. I forget the exact title. Google it, you'll find it. I'll whack it in the description later. But he wrote this article just basically saying, listen, Manhattan is done. Unless something kind of seismic happens, Manhattan's done. It's game over. And he is a New Yorker. He is somebody who loves New York. He loves Manhattan. He was born and raised in Manhattan, lived there most of his life. And he's saying, listen, I don't know if Manhattan and New York are going to come back from this. And he got a lot of hate. There was a bunch of people who were coming in, responding to this article and basically saying things like, well, no, because New York's got this amazing grit and we've come through things before. We came through 9/11. We came through the 2008 crash, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We will bounce back stronger than ever, and things of that nature. And amongst them was Jerry Seinfeld, who wrote an article in the New York Times refuting James Altucher's article and basically saying we're going to bounce back. He's just whatever. He's just an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, blah, blah. Now, Altucher, talking about this, because it's been going on for a long time now. He's been having people giving him hate and criticizing him for writing this article. Basically said, well, no, listen, I mean, we are in a very unique situation here with this virus, with COVID, and with the restrictions that have come about as a result of what's happened. And, he's saying, listen, I've talked to senators, I've talked to, people within the council, I've talked to business leaders, et cetera, trying to find solutions to what's happening within Manhattan. And by the way, I'm talking about Manhattan here, but by extension, this applies to many, many cities across the world. And one of them is London, where I'm sitting now. Okay. London is, obviously the challenges are localized and different, but many, many cities are facing, or many sort of tier one cities, if you like, are facing this particular challenge, which is that for a start, they haven't had any business for nearly 9 months because they've been largely closed. So you've got restaurants closed, bars closed, theaters closed, all the rest of it. But more than that, you've also got loads and loads of very expensive city central real estate that's been sitting empty because people have been working from home. Now, there is this idea, and Scott Galloway talks about this in the podcast, that, and developers are putting out this idea, that basically it's all going to kind of go back to normal, right? There's going to be, when the vaccine arrives or the vaccines or whatever, it's all going to kind of just revert back to normal, and we're going to carry on living as we did before. And James Altucher's argument, and I think Scott Galloway's as well, was like, well, hang on a minute. This is more structural. The changes that we're seeing in society now are more structural. They're deeper than those that we've seen before. And Scott Galloway gave the example of Pinterest, and he said Pinterest are buying out of their leases. He said Pinterest have bought out of their leases in Manhattan. They haven't retained that office space, because what we've seen is a work from home mini revolution happening, where companies are realizing, well, hang on a minute, do I need to have that expensive midtown office, that expensive downtown office, whatever? Can we get rid of that? Can we just have a smaller space and have people working from home, at least from, and Scott Galloway was saying that even if people do return to work, are they going to return to work as much as they were before? Because now this work from home thing has been really, it's been forced on many people and many companies. It kind of suits people because people don't like to do the commute. Some people like working from home. Not everybody does, but some do. It fits their lives better. Companies are realizing that actually it can work pretty well, and they don't necessarily have to be renting or purchasing these big real estate bits of real estate in big cities, etc., etc. So the exodus that we are seeing from cities like Manhattan and perhaps London and other places may not just revert back. It's not as simple as saying, okay, well, beginning of next year, they'll get a vaccine, a load of people will get the jab, and it'll all go back to normal. Maybe not. Maybe this time it won't. And of course, this is compounded by the fact that James Altucher was saying in New York City, you've got restaurants that have been closed pretty much this whole time. You've got bars and things. Some of these places are just never going to open again, And also, imagine if you've got a big company headquarters in a particular location in a city, and then now most of those people are going to be working from home, or even the company are going to buy out their lease and they're not going to come back there. Then that means that all of those local businesses that were surviving off the back of the people working there, they're all going to go out of business. So the local cafes, the local restaurants, maybe local bars, things like this. What we are seeing, and I suppose nobody really knows how this is all going to play out, right? Because we can't see the future. But what it looks like we might be seeing is real systemic change in terms of the way that we live our lives, certainly in these big urban centers like NYC, etc. So what does that mean for you, and why am I talking about all of this? Well, because we're all going through this right now. We're all living through this very strange period of societal change, upheaval, and people use the term unprecedented. I mean, we've heard the term unprecedented so many times this year, but it is unprecedented. I mean, when in any of our lifetimes have we ever seen businesses forcibly closed for long periods of time? I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime, and I've lived, over 40 years now. It is unprecedented, and downstream from that, we're going to start to see societal changes as well. So what I'm kind of coming around to talking about with all of this is on the level of the individual, how is this going to affect you? And what are you going to do about it? And it seems to me, and this is my basic thesis here, it seems to me that there really is no choice now than to look at your skill set, look at your employment, and start to find ways to try to make it anti-fragile. And ultimately, that's got to be about doing your own thing, right? It's got to be about saying, okay, this is a skill set that I have. This is something that I can do. This is something that is somewhat immune to potential further lockdowns, potential further disruption and restrictions of the kind that we've seen this year. And I need to develop that, and I need to find ways to survive without being part of a larger system. That is to say, without being part of a corporation or part of a like some kind of like big company or something like that. Because look at what's happened. I mean, it's kind of weird because like a few years ago, I put out a course which was called Personal Brand Mastery. And it still exists. I can't remember if it's up on my Gumroad page at the moment. But the course is still there. I believe it's a good course. It was something that I put out a few years ago, and it's not really something that I'm actively selling now because at the moment, because I suppose my focus has changed. You know, I did a bit of a detour when I was talking a lot about business and about being a digital nomad and self-employment and all this stuff. And then I veered back into dating stuff, because actually it's more my passion in a way to talk about human relationships and the way that, you know, we interact culturally with each other, as well as sexually. But nevertheless, you know, I did put out this course about personal brand mastery, and what I was really teaching was how to do this kind of thing, or how to do what Aaron Clarey does, which is to say, you put yourself about like a cheap slattern on social media, and you draw an audience. Hopefully you draw some kind of audience to you, and then you monetize your presence by selling a book or books or a course or, you know, membership or whatever it is, you know, right? So it's living that dream of, okay, how can I make a living through the internet? How can I make a living through social media? And so I put the course together really to teach what I'd learned up to that point. And I've learned a lot more since then, by the way, because obviously I'm a few more years in. But I learned up to that point, and then I put out the course to teach that. And what I would always say at the time when I was selling that course, and this was in sort of 2018, I think, 2017, 2018, I would always say, listen, the corporate world is no longer, like, there was always this perception that, okay, you need to get a solid, stable job. You know, you need to be sensible, get a good job, you know? And increasingly throughout my working life, it's become apparent that actually it's not safe and sensible anymore just to get a job, just to get a corporate job. And, you know, if that was true in 2018, by God, it's true in 2020, all right? Because look at what's happening. I mean, this is just incredible, isn't it? This is just unbelievable what we've seen over the last 9 or 10 months across the world. As I say, businesses being forcibly closed, businesses who are unable to operate by operation of the law or the governments because of the risk of the virus. I mean, I don't think anybody could have seen this coming. You know, and it's kind of funny. I know everyone bangs on about the Great Reset and all that. And I mean, I suppose that's another topic, right? But it always seemed like capitalism was just rolling on and on and on, and it was never going to, nothing was ever going to change. It was all about growth and more and more activity and bloody, bloody, blah. And now this has happened. Now 2020's happened. And for the first time, you know, and it's been argued, we're seeing almost a reversion to socialism in a sense in some countries. I mean, you could argue, I saw this morning in an article, they were talking about the United Kingdom, and they were saying that, you know, the state spending is now at the highest level it's ever been outside of wartime. You know, it's quite an incredible situation. But on a personal level, this means that, you know, and I feel very bad if there are people who this affects, but this means that, you know, obviously, like, jobs are on the line, because you can't have a business that's just closed for 9 or 10 months, you know, with not even any real visibility about what's going to happen in future. I mean, like, as James Altucher was saying on his show, like, people just don't have, especially smaller to medium businesses, people just don't have 10 months worth of cash just sitting there in case, you know, in case they're closed down for 10 months, because it's never really happened before. I mean, this is just absurd. Nobody was prepared for this. So, and even now the larger companies, I mean, I read before I went on air with Aaron Clarey, a report again from the UK saying that Arcadia, which is, if people are aware of the brand, Topshop and Topman as well, owned by Sir Philip Green, saying that company may be going into administration in the next few days. Now, I believe, and I don't know a huge amount about Arcadia, but I believe that there were some structural issues before the pandemic. So, you know, listen, there are multiple reasons why these things happen. But nevertheless, you know, we are talking about huge household name organizations, a retail company in this case, potentially going to the wall. I mean, this is, I mean, there's a huge, perhaps they'll get, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they'll get rescued. It'll get whatever. They'll get an injection of cash. There's a huge top shop in the centre of London in Oxford Circus. And it's kind of an iconic store. It's been there for many, many years, over at least 2 decades, maybe more. And it's funny because even the other day I was thinking, God, can you ever imagine that not being there? But the truth of the matter is, in central London now, you walk around, you walk down Oxford Street, which is the main shopping street, you walk down Regent Street, you walk, and certainly in the outlying areas. And places like High Street Kensington as well, which is an affluent area, wealthy area. The number of closed shops, the number of boarded up, or shops with papered over in the windows and everything like that is incredible, really. I mean, I was walking through Leicester Square. Well, it's just happened to me a few times recently. I've walked through Leicester Square, which is kind of like the sort of entertainment centre of London, if you like. There's bars and cinemas and restaurants and things there. And not only have you got all these boarded up nighttime venues like casinos and strip clubs and different things, but you've also got all these, you've got these, unfortunately, homeless people as well who are hanging out and sleeping in the doorways of these boarded up shops. And I remember thinking, wow, this is kind of incredible, really. This is a bit like the pictures that you would see of New York in the early 70s, and I suppose it's a little bit like what they tried to show in the film Joker, that city that's kind of coming apart at the seams and is economically damaged and is in a bad space. And yeah, man, I mean, it's just it's visible. It's visible as we walk around these big cities. And I mean, God knows, what it's like in New York at the moment, but I can understand, James Altucher writing that article. And I can understand as well the pushback that he had about it, the anger that he had in response to that. Because people, I wouldn't like people saying London is dead. But I mean, the reality is the theatres have been closed for months. There was an article a while back saying that the Globe Theatre, by William Shakespeare's theatre on the South Bank in London, may not survive. Now, ever since, the government has been injecting money in, and there's been special dispensation for the arts and things like this. So, let's see what happens. But this is a mental situation, okay? So with all of that being said, we have to look at the individual level. We have to look at how this affects us and our lives going forward. And it seems to me that there can be no greater argument for self-employment and or for doing your damnedest to find a way that you can make money that doesn't rely on the old means, the old institutions, and the corporations, because God knows what's going to happen to them. And if things were uncertain before, if things were uncertain in 2018, they're certainly uncertain now, and I'm very grateful. I mean, that, sometimes I look back on life and I have regrets about things, about decisions that I've made, but I am very grateful at this point that I'm now not in that corporate work that I was doing before, because while it was well paid at the time and for a period of time, it seemed kind of secure in a way, although it was never really secure, corporate work is never really secure. You can always get fired and they'll find ways to get rid of you pretty easily. But, I did pretty well out of it and everything. But now, I mean, there were problems in the industry that I worked in. Even, there have been for over a decade. I mean, even since the 2000s themselves, really. Adding on top of that, the pressures that are created by the restrictions, it's a very, very bad situation. I would not like to be sitting in a corporate job now, kind of just basically powerless, looking at the news, thinking, well, geez, what, is business even going to bounce back from this? What's going to happen as we go into Christmas and then the new year? Obviously, in the UK, we've also got Brexit coming up, which or the final severing of the ties with the EU, if you like. There isn't a deal in place at the moment. That may have some effects as well. There is a ton of uncertainty out there, and this is the thing. Whereas back in the day, it used to be the case that the corporate gig was secure. That was the safe route. That was what you did if you were sensible. Increasingly, it seems that it's actually more sensible to be somebody who is going your own way, to coin a phrase, somebody who is working for themselves and who has some sort of game plan planned out for themselves. Okay. And look, I mean, I'm not saying that's stable either. I mean, like self-employment, it is not stable. You can have a product, 1 week, a load of people buy it, and then nobody buys it for 2 months. I mean, like there are no guarantees in anything. But there is, and I can say this from personal experience, there is a sense of control that comes out of having your own business, having your own products to sell and your own marketing channels and all of that at your control. There is a sense of control that comes with that you really, I don't think you have in corporate work anymore. I really don't, because I know what it's like on both sides of the fence, and I know what it was like sitting there, knowing that the company wasn't doing that well, knowing that the numbers were down, waiting for that next management meeting to find out what's going to happen, to find out if you've still got a job, And that was pre-COVID. That was pre-virus. It's not a good place to be. And I know, obviously, normally here we're talking about dating and, but and all of these things kind of are interconnected in a way, because as we know, I was just talking to Aaron Clary. He was saying status is very important in terms of male-female relations, which, we kind of all know. And being somebody who is beholden to a boss and who is biting their nails every night, waiting to find out if they've still got a job in the morning, is not something that's going to endear you to women. You're not in a power position right now. Of course, listen, I'm not saying, you're selecting your job or your career based on if you're going to, get girls or not, because that's kind of pathetic. But at the same time, like, if we're honest, it does have a bearing on that, right? How much better is it to be the guy who is hopefully location independent, who doesn't rely on one source of income, who has different things going on, different streams of income, and who can potentially travel as well? I mean, like, at the moment, on the more cheerful side of things, at the moment, there's a load of people in Dubai. When I open my Instagram, half the people I know and half the people on there that I follow, and some random people that I follow that I don't know, they're all in Dubai. Dubai is like a massive party at the moment because the UK locked down for a month, which is coming to an end next week, by the way. And so a bunch of people just said, well, listen, do you know what? I can't be bothered sitting around in the UK when it's cold, listening to Boris make speeches. I'm going to just go to Dubai and get a tan and work there and, get my rig out for the photos on the gram. Why not? I mean, what an amazing lifestyle. Now, I didn't do that because I've had some work to do here and I've got some other stuff going on. But I could have done it. Really? I mean, there's nothing really stopping me from doing it, because, well, aside from the fact that I've got some equipment here to do this and, like, it's kind of convenient for me to work from where I am at the moment. I don't really need to be here. I don't really need to be sitting in London, As you might know, sometimes I base myself in Berlin, but Berlin's really cold and dark at the moment and they're locked down as well. I don't really need to be in Berlin, Like now, where James Tusk, who you might recognize from videos that I've done with him, including a couple of interviews on this channel, is over in Mexico. Self-employed. He's over in Mexico. He's got a laptop. He's got an internet connection. He's got a mobile phone, maybe a camera. He can run his business from Mexico or from Brazil or from Colombia, right? How much of a better position is that to be in? And this is the thing. I mean, like, I remember when Anti-Fragile came out by Taleb. a few years ago, whenever it was, and a lot of guys were talking about it at the time, and it was very in vogue to talk about becoming anti-fragile. And I think it is so important. And I think that what we've been shown over this year just underlines that even more. I mean, this was a black swan incident, wasn't it, really? I mean, I think. Well, maybe it wasn't actually, because they kind of were predicting, I suppose, before. But it was sort of an out of the blue occurrence that nobody really expected. But for a start, it proves the point that you are never as safe as you think you are. You know, like, as much as you might think I've got everything sorted and I've got visibility, you've never really got visibility. You know, you've never really got the security that you think you have. And secondly, as I'm saying, like talking about the James Altucher thing, I mean, like what we are seeing now could be very what's the word I'm looking for? God, I've done a couple of hours of Cappy already. It could be very deep systemic change in terms of the way that we work, in terms of the way that we organize our society, in terms of the way that we socialize. And of course, on top of this, what else is happening? Well, we've got the silent march of AI. So it's not just COVID. It's not just suddenly we're all working from home. It's also the fact that AI is coming in and knocking on the door as well. You know, you can hear the footsteps coming up the path, can't you, of AI? So, and by that, what I mean is that there are many, many jobs where artificial intelligence is now able to do that job, or will become able to do that job in the not too distant future. And that is a very scary thing as well. Okay. Now, apparently, there are AI social media influencers. So even I could lose my job, ladies and gentlemen, doing this, because not that I count myself as a social influencer really, but you know what I mean? Like, apparently there are social media like Instagram AI influencers who have, you know, millions of followers. So even something like this, even something like creating content, potentially could go to AI, but I think it's unlikely. I think things like this, you know, this kind of skill where this kind of like softer sort of skill where you are conveying something, you're conveying something human, hopefully, to an audience or to a group of people. You're passing on ideas about the human experience. My feeling, and I could be wrong about this, my feeling is that will last for longer than something like maybe accountancy, where actually a lot of accountancy is quite formulaic. A lot of accountancy just gets done on computers anyway, really. I mean, you need to understand what you're inputting and you know, what the output should be, sure. But, you know, like a lot of accountancy can be done. And certainly lower level stuff. There's so much lower level type admin kind of stuff now that can just be done on machines. You know, human beings are just not needed. So you need to look at all of these forces that are changing, fundamentally changing our society. And it's a, you know, it's a weird time. It's a scary time in a way, because all of this stuff is happening so fast, isn't it? You know, I mean, social media and the dating apps, how quickly have those things come in and just change the way that we date? I mean, Instagram, how old's Instagram now? Is it 7 years or something? Maybe it's a bit longer. I don't know, but it's something like that. You know, it's not very old. And yet now we have a course on Instagram. You know, we have courses on Instagram. We have Myron Gaines and Fresh, Prince CEO, on here yesterday talking about Instagram. They've built a whole course around how to meet girls on Instagram. Now, 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been, nobody would have thought that was necessary, because it was a relatively new thing, or say 6 or 7 years ago. That wasn't a thing. Now, Instagram has become such an integral part of our lives, and people are effectively like living their lives on Instagram, that the idea of dating, the idea of meeting people on Instagram is now a totally feasible thing. You think, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I need to up my Instagram game. I think I'll get on Myron's course. And by the way, you really should, because those guys, top notch. I don't know if you saw that interview we did yesterday, but those guys are awesome. They really, really smashed it. They really know what they're talking about with Instagram. So I'll stick the link below, but you can still get onto the course DMs on demand. So I would recommend that you do if you want to learn more about your Instagram game. But yeah, I mean, it's just mental how quickly things are moving, and we can see how quickly things are moving. Like the way that Tinder gained domination in the dating marketplace. I mean, as I was saying on the Aaron Clarey show just before, there was a point in the early 2000s, kind of before the social networks had got that big and before the dating apps had really got big, where guys were worried that daytime approach, that day game, was going to become outmoded because so many guys were getting to doing it that the cover would be blown, if you like, and girls would just be wise to it. Now, I mean, that was never really realistically going to happen anyway. That was never realistically that was never going to happen anyway, because you can't, attraction never gets old. You can't just max out attraction. If you're an attractive dude and you walk up to a girl and you are charismatic and you show dominance and you show leadership and all these things in that interaction, then she's still going to be attracted to you, whether you're the 17th guy that's approached her that day or not, because attraction isn't a choice, as they say. But rather than day game getting maxed out, what happened instead? Well, the dating apps came to prominence, and then everyone stopped doing daytime approach because everyone was on the dating apps. So within a few years, and this is what I mean, like I'm seeing this stuff happening within my lifetime, and within relatively short periods of time, we are seeing real change in terms of the way that society works, in terms of the way that people relate to one another. It's happening in real time in front of our eyes. And going back to the thing about the cities and what James Altucher and Scott Galloway were talking about, we may be seeing now a real seismic shift in the way that we operate in terms of cities. It may be that the big mega cities are going to become less of a thing. They were talking about on that podcast the fact that a lot of people were moving out of New York City, and Scott Galloway said that he knew quite a number of people of high net worth, millionaires, who were moving out of New York City, and they were inquiring about Florida. They were inquiring about residential property in Florida. Because if the game's not happening in New York anymore, if you don't need to be there, then why do you need to be there? We're kind of masochistic about our cities, aren't we, in a way? Like, everyone loves New York. It's like, oh, you got to be gritty in New York. There's a similar vibe in London, actually. It's like, hey, you got to be gritty, like the true Londoners, they survive and all that kind of stuff. And the thing about city life is, in many ways, it is subpar. Like, you have to commute to places on transport that doesn't always work very well. It can often be very busy and crowded, and it's expensive, and you've got pollution and all this kind of different stuff. And we almost become a little bit masochistic about it, don't we? We start to love it in spite of itself. And I know I certainly do. I love to live in big cities, even though the reality of living in a big city is actually not always that pleasant. But I kind of love it at the same time. Do you know what I mean? But, if on a more bigger, wider societal level, people are going to move away from that, it's a bit like, well, hang on a minute, I could live in Florida with like beautiful sunshine. I can have more space. I can be, out and about in the fresh air, and I can do my work, and I don't need to be in a city. Then, cities may start to become less of a thing. And, like, it's kind of hard when you're in the throes of something to see how monumental it is. But I think actually what's happened with this virus and with the restrictions and stuff over this year is pretty monumental, really. Pretty monumental. And I know people have differing opinions about, the truth of everything that's going on and whatever. But, just what has happened, what has objectively happened is pretty mind-blowing, really. And as much as it's tempting for us to think, oh yeah, it'll just all click back into place, next year it will go back to normal, whatever. Well, maybe it won't. Maybe it won't. maybe this is the start of some big changes in the way that we live our lives. And that's not necessarily something to be afraid of. I mean, I don't mean this to be all doom and gloom, but, you know, you need to be able to roll with the punches. And this is where this anti-fragility piece really comes in, I think, in my view anyway. So, I mean, like, I don't want to make this a big pitch for like, you're right, so become self-employed, give up your job. But I think what you need, well, in my humble opinion, and I say this for myself as much as anybody, what we need to be doing is looking at ourselves and thinking, okay, so how do I optimize? And I've always believed that in one's life, one should optimize from the inside out. Okay, so you want to, like, are you exercising your mind? You know, are you reading? And I know plenty of people in this space bang on about reading the whole time. You know, like, I read 13 books a week and stuff. Well, you don't need to do that. But I mean, my daily routine now, or my morning routine, and this is actually inspired by Altitude, and I've been doing this for quite a long time now, actually over a year, is to read in the morning, to read first thing in the morning. Now, I've always loved to read anyway. But what I do is I wake up, and I probably mess around on social media for a bit, which I shouldn't. And then I set my timer and I'll read something for an hour. At the moment, I'm reading Shakespeare. And this year, I mean, you can see a few of them here. This year, I've read I've read all of the Shakespeare that I hadn't read, you know, all the ones that I've missed out on from school and stuff like that. So that was quite a lot, actually, because he wrote 37 plays. I've read a large number of them because of school and I've seen them and stuff, but I wanted to read everything. So I've worked through all of it. I mean, you've got here, I mean, this one, Titus Andronicus, you know, this is a less well-known one. Very, you know, really, really dark, actually, really dark and, you know, whatever. This one is not well known at all. This is called Two Noble Kinsmen. I hadn't even heard of this one. And actually, it wasn't even included in his complete works for some time because it was co-written with somebody else. And, you know, there's all that scholarly debate about is it one of his or not. But anyway, I mentioned this because I spend an hour in the morning reading, okay? Reading sometimes something that's maybe it takes a bit of thinking about, you know, it's maybe a little bit difficult to read. Now, we can get into then, well, why are you reading plays? You know, what good's that? Blah, blah, blah. But I think for me, there's a couple of things. Firstly, because I write and I want to be as good a writer as I can possibly be. And I believe that the key way to do that is by reading a lot. And Shakespeare is, you know, one of the greatest writers who's ever lived on this planet. I'm reading the poetry now. I've got to the end of the plays. I'm reading the poetry, really enjoying it, actually. I'm reading Lucrece at the moment. I read Venus and Adonis before. I'm reading Lucrece now. Then we'll go into the sonnets and stuff like that. And, you know, somebody said on Twitter the other day, what are the benefits of reading Shakespeare? And it struck me that it's sort of like, because we live in this listicle culture now, it's sort of like everybody wants all right, these are the top 5 benefits that you get from reading Shakespeare. Well, you sleep better, your skin is better, you know, you get I don't know, your sexual potency is increased or whatever. It's not really like that. I mean, like, but what you do get from it is you exercise your mind. And as I say, the key thing here is to work on the core product. So you want to exercise your mind. So therefore, are you reading? You know, I'm reading an hour a day in the morning. I then often will read more later, and I'll read non-Shakespeare stuff. You know, I listen to audiobooks, so I'll listen to business books on audiobook. I'm reading Rich Cooper's new book at the moment on Kindle, and other things, right? So are you reading? You know, are you reading newspapers? I mean, like, I know there's that whole thing about avoid the media, but again, you know, are you reading intelligent material? Are you exercising your brain? Then are you exercising physically? Now, again, I'm not saying anything new here, and I'm not any great exponent for like lifting or whatever, but I do it. You know, and I also run, stuff like that. Are you keeping your body active? You know, again, it's all about looking after the core thing, which is you. You know, you've got to get yourself into the best possible shape. And then once those things are done, are you working on that thing, that skill set that you want to bring to the world, that you want to monetize? Now, for me, And I have to confess, I haven't been great at this year, but for me, writing is the key thing that I believe that I have as a talent and that I really want to do. So ideally what I will do is after I finish reading, I'll then get up and I'll spend some time writing, and I'll spend some time actually doing the thing, the core skill set that I want to nurture and I want to I want to then monetize, make money from. So then I'll spend some time writing. And then, are you then working towards your goal? Whatever your goal is in terms of your career, are you really pushing it forward in terms of your, what you want to do, what you want to achieve? And I believe that right now, we have no choice but to be pointing ourselves in that direction of that thing that we want to do and just running with it. Because look at what's happening around us. I mean, like for me, it was quite a wake-up call, actually. At the beginning of the year, I filmed the course CAD Academy in January. And then I didn't put the course out for a little while because, I'd written it, we'd filmed all the modules. And it was all sitting there ready to go, but there were things I needed to do. I needed to type up notes to go with it. I needed to, there's a lot of like peripheral marketing things to be done. I was procrastinating on it slightly. It was kind of sitting there and I was like, yeah, I've got to do that thing, but whatever, And then when the virus hit and then when lockdown hit and we were properly locked down in the UK, I was like, right, okay, well, what am I going to do now? And I was very unhappy about the fact there was a lockdown and this horrendous thing was happening. And it just seemed crazy to me. But then I very quickly reverted. And I thought, you know what? I've just got to smash it with this. I've got to just double down on doing the thing that I'm doing, which is creating this content, and I did. And it was a very successful early part of the year for me. And I'm not saying that to win brownie points or anything, but it's just like it became very, very clear to me, crystal clear, that we were going into this crazy period in human history that would have ramifications that are still unpredictable to many people. I mean, nobody really knows, where this is all going to end up when the dust is settled. And so it's at moments like that, you think, I've got to get down to, I have no choice but to get down to brass tacks. And what are the brass tacks? Well, I want to stay fit and healthy. I want to ensure that I have an active mind that is supple and is working. And I want to work on my chief skill sets, the things that I want to bring to the world and the things that I want to, will hopefully help people, because that's the other thing. You want to be helping people if you can, but also the things that I want to monetize. And that's what I did kind of instinctively, And the first lockdown was a really intense period of work for me, actually, where I was just like head down. I was like, right, okay, let's crack on with this. I was staying with my girlfriend, so we were basically living together for most of that first lockdown. And obviously that brings its own challenges as well. And I'm sure people are familiar with that. I mean, to go from effectively seeing somebody at weekends, which is what we were doing, and then sometimes, the odd night during the week, to being almost like locked together for 24 hours a day for a long period of time is tricky. And it was particularly tricky for me because I am somebody who finds domesticity sometimes a bit difficult, and that sense of being sort of like forced into, I like to have my own space. I'm kind of introverted. I like to be able to go and do my own thing. And so it was, that was tough. But ultimately, what I understood looking at the whole situation was like, I just need to crack up. I haven't got time to mess around here. I haven't got time. This isn't a holiday. I have to lean into the core things that I believe will bring me forward. And so that's what I did. And like I say, I'm not asking for brownie points here or anything. It's not about that. I'm just saying this is what it was for me. And this is what I would recommend for you guys. And so because of everything that's happening, I just think we need to have this head down. Okay, right. I'm going to focus. I'm going to crack on. mentality. All right. Now, in terms of dating, and in terms of sex and all of that stuff, I believe that this also has a good knock-on effect for that, because really, I mean, look, like this whole channel is about dating, and it's about the sexual marketplace and all that kind of stuff. Juan says, great content. Thank you, sir. Cheers, appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. So, you know, all of this is about sex and it's about dating and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, being real, that is one element of our lives. It's not all of our lives. You know, it's one element. It's a very important element, and it's a very pleasurable, fun element, but it's not the whole picture. You know, like, our lives are so much bigger than that. And, you know, like, if you lose your job, and I hope that nobody watching this has lost their job, and I'm sorry that if you did, but or if you're experiencing that, but listen, I mean, I've lost the thread now. You know, like, if you're in that unfortunate situation, then you know, the other stuff kind of goes out the window. I mean, I remember times in my corporate job, when I remember doing times in my corporate job when I was I'm losing my thread because I'm reading a comment here. When I was very worried about work, I was very worried about if I was going to you know, to keep my job or not, because there were going to be redundancies and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, those periods, my sex drive went out the window. I mean, those periods, my interest in girls went really, really down. And as much as I will say to clients, whether you want to be out doing your day game the whole time, blah, 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 there were long periods of time where I would just drop it because I was so stressed out. I was so anxious. I was so concerned about the job, because it's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it? You know, what is higher up in that hierarchy of needs? And ultimately, you need to make an income because you need to have a roof over your head and blah, 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 blah. So listen, Wayne Ronnie, who I think is stalking me on the internet, says, still waiting for you to do just one infill on YouTube, just one video, just one. Can you do it? Well, like I said yesterday, I did have many infills actually up on here. I had about 12 or something like that. I had more than Tom Torero had, actually. I had more up on this channel. I took them down because, as people will know, was it 2019? Yeah, back in 2019, there was some issues with that content. There were some legal issues in the UK. There were you know, some legal cases going on and stuff like that. And you know, and so I put them onto private. They are shared in my product, Renegade Dating Blueprint, which I know you don't want to buy, so I'm not going to ask you to buy it, but they are out there. And listen, maybe they'll go back. Let's see what happens in 2021. Okay, guys? Let's just see what happens in 2021. But what I will do is this. I am doing a free webinar on Monday night, okay? So it's on Zoom. It's not on YouTube. It's on Zoom. It's 100% free, and anybody can join. And what I will be doing in that webinar is I will be going through some infill content. So if anybody wants to see some infills where I actually talk to some real life birds, then come along to that webinar and you will see them, and you won't pay any money. And it's going to be awesome because you're going to just love it. Yeah, so what I'll do, I'll try and get that link. I'm going to be putting that link below here anyway. So if you want to come to that webinar, Monday night, 11 p.m. UK time, 6 p.m. in the EST, and you will see some infills. But will I put them back up on here? Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, you know, like, to be honest, obviously I get guys who are banging on about it the whole time, which I do get. So I guess there's kind of an argument for it. I mean, like I said, really, the reason I took it off was because of the legal issues, and also because of some stuff in your, you know, personal life as well. Like, I didn't feel it was appropriate to have them up at the point. But have I done them? Yeah, I have. You know, and people like, I mean, I think this Wayne Ronnie dude was talking about James Tusk. And James, you know, full credit to James. He's got infills up on his channel. He's really the only, like, high profile dude that's putting up consistent infills, and good on him for that. But I've worked with James Tusk. You know, I was on a bootcamp running a bootcamp with James Tusk a couple of weeks ago. Tusk has seen my Infields, Tusk has seen my stuff. He will vouch for me. So it's not really a question of does this stuff exist? It's more a question of where do I publish it? And publishing it on YouTube. And I mean, I've even chatted with James about this actually. And I mean, obviously he's continued to publish on YouTube, but it's not, you've got to be a bit careful, for legal reasons, for the YouTube T's and C's, and for other reasons as well. But watch this space, guys. Maybe 2020 is going to be a bumper year. Just wait and see. Let's see what happens, okay? But in the meantime, like I say, if you want to see some stuff, you want to see some action, and you don't want to pay any money, which is fair enough, then come along on Monday to my webinar, and I will show you all behind the paywall, okay? But listen as well, the other thing about this is that, I mean, one of the reasons that I do these live streams is because, we talk about proof of ability, right? And I saw somebody the other day posted, I did a live stream, I don't think it was yesterday, I think it was the day before. And somebody posted like good rambling skills or something like that because of the fact that he said, and somebody else asked me, like, how do you talk for that length of time without having somebody like passing you notes or without having it structured? Like, how do you do that? And of course, what I'm doing as well as talking to you about Corona and about restrictions and stuff is I'm also demonstrating the skill set. Because do you really think, I mean, like, does anybody who's watching this seriously think that I'm going to go on a date with a girl and I'm going to run out of things to say? Or does anybody seriously think that I go up to the girl in the bar or in the coffee shop or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, I just can't, I'm tongue-tied now. I can't think what to say. Do you know what I mean? Like the fact that I can do this, because what do you need in a social situation? What you need in a social situation is that ability to walk up to the girl, start a conversation, be engaging, have things to say, be humorous, blah, 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 keep the vibe going, and then escalate, get the phone number or, take it in a different direction. Okay. I mean, does anybody seriously think from watching these live streams that I'm not able to do that? I mean, seriously, do you know what I mean? Do you think I'm going to walk up to the girl and I'm like, oh my God, what do I say? I'm just so nervous. I mean, so even in doing these things, I'm demonstrating the same skill set that you need in order to be successful in social situations by just doing these live streams. And this is live. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not pre-recorded. So that in itself should demonstrate that I have some ability in this area, right? But of course, I do understand that people want to see this stuff and they want to see some, some actual interactions. And so that's what I do. And by the way, we've got a ton of them. I mean, when I release the Kraken, there is a lot of this stuff in the can that hasn't even been seen yet. So it's all out there. Anyway, as I say, maybe next year will be different. Let's see. Maybe I'll change things up and start to put some more stuff out on YouTube again. Let's just wait and see. Ian says, if cities die, so will day game. Probably. I just can't see it happening. So many people love all that cities offer. F living on a farm and growing a beard after all this isolation. Well, yes, I agree. It's the trad dream, isn't it? It's like, we can all finally leave the cities and go and live in that farm and get the check shirt and bloody blah. No, I mean, I'm not on board with that life either, and I think this is the counter argument. And referring back to that, the James Altucher, Scott Galloway podcast again, they did cover this. They did talk about this because the counter argument is to say, well, a city like New York is going to become cheaper again. And what that's going to mean is that younger people are going to move back in and maybe it'll become more of a haven for art, like arts and artists and things, kind of like what it was in the 70s. Because back in the 70s, there was a big art scene in place in like Soho and Chelsea and things like that. You get all these like young artists hanging out there and being bohemian and everything and creating amazing art. Of course, they all got priced out. They all had to move to Brooklyn, and then Brooklyn became massively expensive. And I mean, God knows where they live now. Do you know what I mean? But So perhaps the silver lining of what's happening now is maybe that will be a bit reversed. Maybe our cities will be less monumentally expensive and just the preserve of billionaires and buy to leave property investors, Chinese investors who buy a property and then just never even go there because they live in Shanghai or whatever. Maybe that'll happen. But James Eltich's point was it's going to take some time because it's not going to happen overnight, because in the interim period, it's going to be the vested interests of everybody involved to try and keep prices as high as possible. Because, remember, the landlords, the people that own the buildings, or the people that are even leasing the buildings or whatever, I mean, they've all got their own overheads as well. They can't just say in 2021, oh, do you know what? Let's just slash rents, because they've got to meet their payments as well. They've got to maintain their credit status. So unless you're looking at a complete collapse, it's going to be really hard to suddenly see rents, prices go through the floor. It's going to take time, and it's probably going to take, a bit of a bloodbath, to be honest, before we get there, if we do get there. But I do agree with Ian to say that I think that people are drawn to cities for a reason, and I don't think that's going to go I don't think it's going to go away. I still find it kind of mind-blowing, to be honest, that people who've lived in New York for a long period of time are now seeking to move to Florida or something like that. I mean, for myself, I think regardless of what happens in London, I wouldn't just automatically think, oh, well, in that case, I'm just going to go and move to Somerset then, because even now, even locked down, London is still, there's still stuff going on. There's still a lot of fun to be had in London, even throughout this year when all the restrictions have been in place. I don't mean there's been I guess there have been mad parties, like secretly, but I don't mean that kind of thing. I just mean that, it's a good place to be. You can walk around. There's cool stuff to do. There's some cool stuff to see. And I don't think that's just going to disappear by any means. And I think you're right. People come together for a reason. I don't think it's just because this is where the work is or, anything like that. I think that there are many people who enjoy the buzz of being together in that kind of environment. And I mean, listen, in our lifetimes, it's not going to go away. But I'm just saying, when you look at overarching trends, it is moving in that opposite direction. And, right now, to be honest, in London, day game probably is compromised by it because, for a start, there's no tourists here. There aren't really any students here. Many of the foreign nationals who are living here have chosen to move out because they've gone back to their home countries. So, even now in this situation, we are seeing, like day game is inevitably, a night game, I suppose, is inevitably, compromised by the fact that there just aren't as many people here. And who knows when that's going to revert back to the norm, if it ever does. Farhan says, it was me who asked this question. He means about how do I talk and talk and talk and talk. That's why I watch your content every day. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks ever so much for tuning in. I remember it was you now. WMJ says, the god of rock himself, Robert Plant, became a farmer at one stage. Well, I'll tell you even more than that. What about Leonard Cohen? If you guys know Leonard Cohen, the American singer-songwriter, he became a monk, didn't he, for a period of time? I saw a film about him last year with Tom Torero, actually, funny enough. It's a little known fact. Went to the cinema with Tom Torero. No popcorn. There wasn't the popcorn trick. But we went to see a film about Leonard Cohen. It was a biopic about Leonard Cohen. And Leonard Cohen gave it all up and went to live as a monk for about 5 years, I think. Gave up all the fame, the money, the acclaim, shaved his head and wore robes and was a monk. Mental, really. I think I'm far too unenlightened for that. I think I like my skinny lattes too much, but and nice clothes and things. But I don't know. I mean, maybe he's got the right idea. Crazy. Adam says, as soon as the flights resume in the spring, I'll be taking my English ass over to America on a road trip to slay some waitresses and barmaids. Good idea. Fantastic. Ian says, maybe this is the housing bubble crash that London was waiting for, and a shoebox will cost less than 12k a year. Well, I'm told rents are going down. I mean, as I say, the difficulty you've got is that the landlords are still gonna. I think rents have gone down. I mean, obviously, certainly commercial rents, but I think residential, domestic rents, I think are going down as well. But it is tricky because the landlord's still got to make that mortgage. The thing that actually is probably propping it up is very low interest rates, right? So the mortgage payments are low, and that has a knock-on effect. But who knows what's going to happen next year? A lot of people talking about farms here. I've never really wanted to have a farm myself. Kai Zen says inner game is fundamental. 100%. I believe that's absolutely true. I mean, my take on all this stuff, if you want the USP, I think I'm more of an inner game kind of guy than anything, because I do think it's so important. AJ Dub says Troy is such a classy dude. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate that. Really nice to hear. After all of the flack I get from all these people, it's good to get some people who are actually kind of appreciate what you do, which is really nice. AJ Dub says, yeah, man, after the pandemic ends, we've got to deal with the debt accumulated by government's business. It's exactly true. Systemic change, more working from home, bad for real estate, bad for businesses, driving people going to work. I mean, it's tough, isn't it? Because yes, we can all work from home, and as much as I always hated going into an office and working with people that, you don't particularly like or whatever, there's more than something. I mean, human contact, human interaction is essential. It's essential in a creative sense. Like if you've got a bunch of people sitting around a table, that energy, that spark, hard to replicate that on Zoom, unfortunately. I mean, not to say you can't do good things online on Zoom, but it's there is something about meeting in real life that is invaluable. So like I said, I don't think it's going to disappear entirely, but I believe we are seeing a shift, and this is why I believe that we should work on ourselves and we should seek to optimize ourselves. In fact, we've got no choice but to do that if we want to see a clear way through the current situation. Talking about the infields, Bert says Troy used to have lots of infields he's talking about on YouTube, but now they're high in the paywall. Troy's as smooth as hell in his infields. I am. Thank you very much for that recommendation. I mean, there's dudes on here as well who have been in CAD Academy, or they're on my Patreon or whatever, and they've seen my infield. So, I mean, like I say, if you want to see some infield footage, join me on Monday in my free webinar. Okay, so I'm doing a free webinar on Monday. It will be at 6 p.m. EST, 11 p.m. UK time. I'm going to put the link for it in the description below. I'll do that in a second. I haven't had a chance to do it yet. When we finish, I'll do it. But yeah, just come along to that free webinar and you will see the goods and be amazed by my smoothness and the glory of those interactions. And it will hopefully teach you some stuff as well. Oh, Anon says, that's why I like Troy focusing on substance and intellectual matters, not just on picking up girls. Indeed. Well, as much as we might want to talk about that, we can't talk about it the whole time. It's good to open up a little bit. Ian says, can confirm Troy's infields are legit. That Russian goal was spicy. 100%, man. Very spicy indeed. Yeah, thanks for the support there, dudes. But like I say, if anyone wants to see Monday, come along. Link is below. Get on the waiting list for that free webinar that I'll be doing, and you can yourself feast on the delights of those infield recordings. Okay, listen, I'm going to have to call it a day now because I've got to eat something, and I've been on with Aaron Clary, so I've been on for a few hours now. But I hope that you guys got something from that. It's a big topic, scratching the surface of it, really. But, this is the world that we live in at the moment. It's a very strange, confusing place. I think, and this is where I've been greatly influenced by James Altucher himself, actually. And, I would encourage you to look at his books, look at his book, Choose Yourself, his other books, his blog writings, his podcasts and stuff like that, because he is very good on this stuff, and he's influenced me a great deal. And you know, like his mantra is always, you know, work on yourself and just spend a lot of time coming up with ideas about, like, how can I make money? What business ideas have I got? I mean, he recommends, I think, writing down 10 ideas every day. And most of them are going to be rubbish, but the odd one is going to be good. And maybe that's something you can action. You know, it's all about working on yourself. You've got to keep yourself in the best possible condition, you know, keeping your mind in sharp by, as I would say, reading, keeping your skill set sharp. So like by writing or, you know, whatever it is that you want to do, recording videos, blah, 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 you know, just working on that thing. You want to keep yourself physically in a good shape, mentally, spiritually, get enough sleep, you know, look after the core product and point yourself in a direction and pursue that direction, because, and make it something that you can monetize as well, because that is going to be more stable for you. Do you know what I mean? If you can build a skill set and you can build an audience of people who are interested in you doing that skill set, that is what's going to give you longevity, not like, oh, can I get that promotion at the company that may go bust next week anyway because of restrictions. There you go. Okay. Please do hit subscribe to the channel. Do drop me a comment, give me a like, all of that stuff. Get on that free webinar. You'll see the link below. Get on the waiting list for CAD Academy. Also, as I say, it opens the 1st to the 5th of December. 100 people only. After that, it closes. Get your place by clicking on that link below and join me in that webinar. And I will see you guys very soon. We'll be on Rule Zero tomorrow. I think it's on Ryan's channel. So I will see you then. All right. Bye-bye.